My name is Jeff Roberts, and I will be your host for this edition of Time for a Slow Burn. This program is a monthly event, and we will discuss topics of interest to the southeastern corner of Wisconsin, the state, and of course nationally. The topics can be just about anything, and usually are. Usually something that starts off as a discussion, a debate, or just a plain old-fashioned yelling match between friends and neighbors. And it's surprising what can get a person all riled up. Sadly, it's usually something about local or national politics, a television program, or something we've witnessed firsthand. And sometimes it's just a rumor. For our first topic, I was shocked to read an op-ed on the current state of American business. The headline read, "Leadership Development, the time to act is now." Okay, that sounds reasonable, but act on what was my question, and I bet it was yours too. So I read the article and was not surprised at all to find it had an all too familiar theme. The article from the Brandon Hall Group, a business think tank, did not enlighten me at all, not even in the least. I've heard many of these so-called facts pushed at seminars in the past. Sometimes the stats were lower, sometimes higher, depending upon who you really chose to believe, or just how convincing the speaker might be, and that usually plays a lot of weight. What I actually took away from this article was this. About 50% of the organizations interviewed said the following: their in-house business leaders were not ready to lead their companies into today's highly complex and competitive marketplace. Wow. Well, here's another bit of shocking news. 70% of the companies interviewed said this: their current business leaders are not ready to lead the company into the future, or even near future, and that's usually the next 5 years. Then there's the last bit of good news. 25% of all companies said this about their futures and their future leadership: we do not have a ready and willing successor identified for at least one critical leadership position at our company. And for all of that, all I can say is, wow. But I have to agree. American business has been stuck in the past, still pushing low-skilled jobs in manufacturing overseas to save stakeholder money in the short term, totally ignoring the long-term implications and the cost factors that are involved. Sadly, that solution, or that type of solution, never works for very long. The leaders are then stuck trying to find more ways to save the company money, especially when the new wears off that tactic and the price tag continues to skyrocket. And it's usually due to local government interference or corruption, and it's usually all at the grassroots level. After the first 2 or 3 years, the cost savings is eaten up with the training costs to get the local workforce up to speed and basic rudimentary skills to operate the equipment safely, or to pay off corrupt government leaderships in the host country. Or, in many cases, and this is a big or, this is the issue to start manufacturing product right away. But for others, the skill sets were not as high as advertised by the local governments to begin with. So the companies have begun an education and training program, or programs, for silly things like, basic hygiene, nutrition, and reading, and simple math skills, to name a few. How in the world can American business move a complex operation like manufacturing to an overseas location or south of the border and expect the locals to handle simple things like taking a bath or a shower before coming to work, or changing into clean clothing every day? They don't have the infrastructure in place to do that before. What makes you think they're going to do that when we show up and the promise of a better life? In most cases, the American companies have discovered they must build the infrastructure before moving operations during that build-up period at that location. That can take years to change the culture of a region, if ever, so instead they push everything in as fast as they can. Now, sadly, American business is still trying to compete in markets that we have lost to other countries and will never regain that market share position again. We can no longer manufacture the goods and services we pushed overseas. Changing our own expectations is the only way. Without it, forget it. It's not going to happen. These expectations run pretty deep, so we have a laundry list of companies that no longer manufacture products in the U.S. Now, if you think I'm full of hot air, go to your kitchen. Lift up any small appliance and look at the bottom or the tag on the back. Where was it manufactured? In most cases, it was China, the Philippines, Malaysia, or other overseas locations, or even south of the border from America. If you're lucky, the tag says, "Assembled in the USA." But that only means the appliance was shipped to the United States. A U.S. facility added the instruction manual or other part or two, maybe, to complete the model and repackaged it with the company's branded packaging. Our own automobile industry and manufacturing have gone the same way. The original equipment manufactured parts are built and then shipped to the U.S. facilities for assembly. However, not all cars, SUVs, and minivans, or even pickups, were assembled in the U.S. Nearly all of the parts are made across the border, either north or south, and even overseas. In the past 20 years, I've driven 2 pickups. Both carried the bow tie emblem on the front. Both had manufactured parts from other countries. One was assembled in Mexico, the other Canada. So much for American built. My former neighbor used to drive blue oval emblem cars, and only blue ovals. He tried to tell me once, my, insert manufacturer's name here, is the only one who builds American cars built by Americans, only by Americans. So I took him outside to see his strictly American car, up close and personal. He popped the hood and trunk, and I promptly pointed out the stickers that clearly stated the hood was made in Canada. The same with the air cleaner, valve covers, and engine block. The fenders, doors, and trunk lid were all made in Canada. Much to his chagrin, the majority of his built-in-America car was assembled in Canada. We did find the master brake cylinder, seating, carpeting, and other parts were made in Mexico. The majority of the electronics gauge packages were made overseas, but at least the car itself was assembled in a facility just outside of Chicago. I thought he was going to cry. He had sworn loyalty to the blue oval gods. They had tricked him, and he was devastated. So a very valuable lesson should be learned, but wasn't. American business is not ready to learn from our own past and very painful mistakes. We have all but put our collective eggs into one basket and then dropped that basket from the tallest towers in Detroit and from all the other manufacturing cities and centers across the country. We have lost the lead and many advantages we had in manufacturing to the rest of the world. This we did due to greedy business leaders, stakeholders who require higher and higher rates of return on their investments, and Wall Street analysts who are 30-something-year-olds who haven't got a clue how a product is manufactured, just that it needs to be cheaper and faster to meet highly inflated Wall Street expectations. So the cycle of pushing American manufacturing and service industries overseas continues, even though the sins of the past have come back to haunt us, and we're still willing to give in to our own arrogance and greed. In doing so, we have lost the ability to manufacture goods and services that meet our own country's needs. We must rely on overseas facilities to produce electronics that last less than 3 years. Durable goods, which are, of course, major appliances that were meant to last at least 10 years, but barely make it past 5 now, all for the sake of record profits. Maybe that's why America no longer has an electronics industry. All of the brands that were manufactured in the U.S. have moved overseas or closed up shop and are just branded as a U.S. company. Automobile manufacturing is slowly but surely departing our shores as well, or across the border to more profitable territories. And unions are still in a state of shock over the loss of power and prestige, and rightly so. It's really no wonder if it cost union scale to hire a U.S. employee, but a foreign manufacturer can hire an assembly worker at 25% of the daily rate of the U.S. employee. Let's do the math. Let's see. 4 for the price of 1. That means U.S. salary and compensation for top tiers of management are well beyond controls as well. Union scale for blue-collar employees is not competitive. The cost of purchasing spare parts and parts for assemblies are far too high. Therefore, business leadership is forced to consider moving overseas manufacturing operations as an option. So manufacturing plants are closed, consolidated for a few years, and then closed. And then it gets moved overseas. And there you have it. America again loses its edge, and American business leadership fails to plan for the future, even for 5 years from now. But they have to stop creating the strategic business plans that only curry favor for stakeholders and investors, thus ignoring long-range future issues. The manufacturing facilities that were once strong and vibrant have held the promise for American life for decades. They're now rotting away, empty and neglected by companies that have pulled up stakes and moved operations, manufacturing operations that is, overseas or across the border. Even the simple things in life have changed. Take a look at your bathroom tomorrow morning. Take a look at the tube of toothpaste. I bet it was manufactured in Mexico. There's only one company that still manufactures toothpaste here in America. I looked to see which one that was, and I used that brand and that brand only. So should you. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You're watching Kenosha Community Television. Stop on down and become a friend of Harbor Market.
Welcome back. For our next topic, we have the wonderful world of politics. Ah, yes, politics. Specifically, the world that Donald Trump lives in. It is indeed a wonderful world, filled with fences that keep out the unwanted, where women are known as dogs and know their place, where the media is thrown out of press conferences, especially if it's a woman reporter from Fox News that asked Trump a question he didn't like. Good for you, Megyn Kelly. Or a Latino who asked a question he did not want to answer. Donald Trump has run for president before and never made it past the beginning primaries. He's a new strategy this time. He's trying as hard as he can to alienate anyone he doesn't like, and it's working. Those who admit supporting Donald Trump feel he is their voice. He is exactly what he feels and says, and they love him for it. Sadly, it still doesn't change the facts. He's a bigoted, arrogant jackass. When you hear him speak, he's full of bluster, none of which he could deliver on if elected as president. He would be impeached by Congress within a year or declared to be mentally unstable and removed from office earlier. Trump says what he wants to say, just for shock value. Some Americans really believe in what he says is real. America loved to hate him on the reality shows, so what makes anyone think even for a second he would make a difference if he was elected as an official, especially as president? What do you think he could really do? Well, the answer is simple. Anyone who stood up to him, government or otherwise, thinking they did it for the good of America, he would fire them. Donald is a windbag and would try to push his agenda across America. We've suffered through that crap already. I would say enough is enough. Just in a different flavor right now. It's so-called hope and change. That train fizzled out. Obamacare is a disaster from its inception, and his selected cabinet members have driven a wedge between America and the world. Obama's domestic policies have fizzled in dramatic fashion. Just look at Ferguson, Los Angeles, Chicago, Baltimore, and any other city undergoing violence against law enforcement. These are just a few of the many examples of the Obama administration's race-baiting tactics. The rule of law means nothing to Obama because he's had 2 attorney generals cherry-pick which laws they want to follow and which to ignore. No matter how many times Obama tries to play down the impact of the rule of law, he's been exposed for what he really is, a bigot and a liar, especially when it comes to gun smuggling and dealing with illegal immigrants. But Trump would build a wall around the borders to prevent such incursions. Right? Wait a minute. We have a wall, and it doesn't stop them. And ICE and the U.S. Border Patrol are required to let them and anyone else cross the border. They can just keep right on going through. Liberal judges allow illegal immigrants and criminals to remain here in the U.S., some to continue to commit murder, and others horrible crimes. Very serious. Well, that's what they've always done. And if they get deported, so what? They're back in 24 hours. They just hop the border again. And all is as it should be. Illegals doing what they came here to do and what they do best, and that is crime. I call them illegal because they entered the United States illegally and remain here illegally. They buy stolen IDs, stolen Social Security numbers, and other documents to remain here as long as possible. Some take the easy way out and apply for welfare and food stamps and other freebies provided by the socialists who sit in Washington, D.C. We call them Congress. And to the state capitals as well. And they buy their votes directly on Election Day. Others just want a place to work and live, but they fear they will not be able to stay if they are discovered, because they are illegal. So, the only alternative is to pay for stolen documents and try to blend in as best they can. They live their lives as a lie and hope no one gets caught. However, they are still illegal. If they're caught, they're held for a period of time or until a liberal savior, usually a federal judge, orders their release from custody. Once released, or within a few hours, it's time to disappear and try to do it all over again. And this time, hopefully without getting caught. And so the cycle begins again. But the great Donald Trump wants to change all that. He wants to save us from that. In his way of thinking, and his word alone will cause the illegals to shy away from the border hopping, or he will fire them. By his own force of will, Congress will give in to his demands and listen intently as he speaks, or he will fire them. The press will fall down at his feet and print every word he says exactly as he says it and never question what he says, or he will fire them. Women will know their place in Donald Trump's America, and they will realize the truth. They are nothing but dogs, or he will fire them. Yes, indeed, Donald Trump will rule America like he has done with his many real estate and other businesses, and we will like it, or he will fire us. The foolish talk and bluster of Donald Trump prior to the primaries reminds me of just how low American politics have sunk. Just imagine we're trying to offer up a chump like Trump to run America as our highest elected leader. Maybe the American people should wake up and do the right thing. Fire Trump. Speaking of liberal pieces of work, interesting that the LA Times was involved in doing this next op-ed. Lou Dobbs reported this on CNN, and it cost him his job several years ago. It doesn't really matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. This should be of great interest to you. I know it is to me. The op-ed starts off with, California is the largest insane asylum in the world. Yeah, to that I'll add, if you don't believe me, just walk down the boardwalk at Venice Beach, California. You'll see what I mean. Fact, 40% of all workers in Los Angeles County, that's LA County and the LA County Metroplex, that equals to 10.2 million people. Most work for cash and are not paying taxes. This is because they're predominantly illegal. Immigrants working without a green card. Fact, 95% of the warrants for murder in Los Angeles are for illegal aliens. Fact, 75% of the people who on the most wanted list in Los Angeles are illegal aliens. Fact, 2/3 of all births in Los Angeles County are illegal Mexicans on Medi-Cal, whose births are paid for by taxpayers. Fact, nearly 35% of all the inmates in California detention centers are Mexican nationals here illegally. Fact, 300,000 illegal aliens in Los Angeles County are not living in houses or apartments. They live in garages. Fact, the FBI follows reports that half of all gang members in Los Angeles are most likely illegal aliens from south of the border. Fact, 60% of all occupants of HUD properties in California are illegal. You remember what HUD is? Housing Urban Development, a federally sponsored program. Fact, 21 radio stations in Los Angeles are Spanish-speaking only. Fact, in Los Angeles County, 5.1 million people speak only English. 3.9 million people only speak Spanish. There are 10.2 million people in Los Angeles County, as earlier reported. So that leaves 1.2 million who speak a mixture of one language or the other or both. Here's some more fun facts. Fact, less than 21% of all illegal aliens, or 2%, are working in the agricultural industry, but 29% are on state or federally sponsored welfare. Over 70% of the United States annual population growth, that's over 90% in California, Florida, and New York, results from immigration. Fact, 29% of the inmates in the federal prisons and penitentiaries are illegal aliens. Well, here's a related piece for you, too. It's called Liberals' Paradise. A liberal paradise would be a place where everybody has guaranteed employment, free comprehensive health care, free education, free food, free housing, free clothing, free utilities, and only law enforcement has guns. Believe it or not, Such a place does indeed already exist. It's called prison. Spoken by none other than Sheriff Joe from Arizona. I echo those sentiments, Joe. Good job. On the topic of liberals and the liberal agenda, here's a news story that should brighten your day. Well, if you hate the Constitution, specifically the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. One Bravada Singletary, who's 37 years of age and a special assistant to the president, was arrested on Friday, August 7th, 2015. This was after she allegedly fired a handgun at her boyfriend following a domestic dispute. As it turned out, she invited her boyfriend, a Capitol Hills police officer, over to her house for consensual sex, and then accused him of seeing another and being with another woman. Miss Singletary demanded to see his cell phone and view the text. She refused, and he then reached into his bag, pulled out 2 cell phones and his service weapon. She demanded the passwords to the cell phones and his accounts. When he refused, she said, "Your phone is more important to you than me holding a gun on you." End of quote. She then promptly shot her couch where he was sitting. Miss Singletary is the House Legislative Affairs Liaison and is paid approximately $125,000 per year as such. Although she was a low-level staffer, she willfully discharged a weapon during a domestic dispute and has earned the president a very black eye. Because the Obama administration is the most gun-hostile administration in history, so much so, President Obama has earned the title of the best gun salesman in America. What makes the situation more laughable is when then Vice President Dick Cheney shot his friend by accident while hunting. The media was all over that incident. That incident received much more national coverage than a paragraph in a local newspaper, even though it was Bravada Singletary, the low-level staffer, shooting at her Capitol Hills police boyfriend. Who says the Obama administration never gets a free pass? Oh, that reminds me. Did anyone pay attention to the news in Los Angeles about the gun control foolishness? It seems that L.A. has now passed a law, or an ordinance. You can no longer own a magazine that holds more than 10 rounds. On the 28th of July, the City Council voted 12-0 to ban all magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. No exceptions for any reason so far. That includes retired police officers and other government officials. Wonder how long that will last, especially considering criminals do not worry about a magazine ban. In fact, they will encourage it. Makes their life of crime a lot easier. Well, according to the LA Times article, residents have 60 days to turn in their magazines or remove them from the city. City Councilman Kirkorian stated the new law will be enforced by the Los Angeles Police Department. Now, that type of action previously prompted the NRA to sue the city of San Francisco and Sunnyvale, California, in similar bans. The liberal courts in the area ruled that this type of ban does not infringe on Second Amendment rights. However, how long do you think it's going to be before the citizens rise up and throw those out of office who voted for the ban? Yes, all 12. Remember Colorado? I do. For our last topic, I've discovered and discussed this in the past, but somehow the Congress mindset is the same as when it was then. Now our Social Security benefits are being set up to be stripped away forever by our wonderful congressional lapdogs. Funny how that works. The fault of the greatest generation and the baby boomers. To be honest, I'm sick and tired of hearing that Social Security is going broke and its demise is right around the corner if we don't do something right away to protect it. Really? Protect it? Is that what you call reducing the benefits for those who have paid into the system previously known as a trust fund? Another reason for Congress to establish term limits. Get the old goats out of office before they do any more damage to our economy and our lives. After all, they don't draw Social Security. They've got their own retirement system. And here's another reason why I say that. This was sent to me by an angry citizen, and rightfully so. We are continually reminded in the news that unless there is drastic cuts to our benefits, Social Security will go bankrupt, and that, of course, is the reason for its demise. Too many old people drawing benefits they paid for. How dare they use them? For over the past 20 years, we've been told that senior citizens have paid into Social Security for over 45 years of their working lives and are now receiving Social Security benefits that are the cause of the demise of Social Security. Now, in the past 5 decades, it was the greatest generation in the baby boomers that have paid into Social Security for almost 50 years of our working lives, and we're now eligible to start drawing Social Security according to the law. And we are told we are the reason for the demise of Social Security. Wait, because we're drawing our own benefits that we paid for already via taxes? What in the world did I miss? This infuriates the crap out of me, and I hope it does you too, because it is not the senior citizens whom are entitled to Social Security that's causing its demise. It's the liberals in Washington, past and present. Both have caused this giant quagmire. When Social Security was started, one of the stipulations was that the money would be put into an independent trust fund rather than in the general operating fund. Therefore, it would be used to fund the Social Security retirement plan and program, and not other government programs. Then in 1958, a Democratic Congress voted to remove funds from Social Security and put it into the general fund for Congress to spend. The logic of Congress at the time was there was so much money in the Social Security fund that it would never be used up, and the purpose would always be there as intended. Then during the Jimmy Carter administration, the Democratic Party decided to give annuity payments to immigrants, even though they never paid a dime into it. In the past few years, we have seen liberals like Nancy Pelosi initiate policies that enabled people to draw Social Security who do not have any right to this benefit. These druggies, alcoholics, illegal immigrants who have paid nothing into Social Security, people who claim to be disabled and yet can work for cash, and even dead people collecting Social Security benefits are still on the active rolls. And you're blaming us retirees for the demise of Social Security? Those of us whom are of the greatest generation and the baby boomers, which I am one of them, have paid the majority of the money into Social Security. We do protest, and do protest loudly. Where is that money? Where in the world did it go? It was estimated that over $2.7 trillion is owed into what was called the Social Security Trust Fund. If the funds have been left alone to grow instead of being pilfered by Congress and shyster bureaucrats who work for career politicians, there would have been ample money in the account for the baby boomers and the greatest generation retirement requirements. So stop blaming those of us who have paid into Social Security for all of our working lives and have reached retirement age. We're beginning to draw Social Security benefits because we paid for them. We've earned them. Plus, place the blame where it really belongs, on Congress and the socialist dogma that does not allow a dollar, quarter, dime, nickel, or penny to go unspent. Just look at our national debt for all the proof that you need to see the truth. We're a nation of debtors, and the situation will get worse as long as career politicians run things in Congress and in Washington, D.C. Isn't it time we cleaned out the fridge? Well, that's it for another edition of Time for a Slow Burn. Tune in next time for topics of interest that tend to burn your hide. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.